Well, now we are going to move to our next presentation. So Jennifer, can you turn your camera on and say hello?
Hello, I am Jen Ripley. Good afternoon, everyone.
Well, we are excited to have you with us. And just go to the presentation mode and take it away.
Okay, are you guys seeing my presentation right now?
Wait, let me make sure. We see it in PowerPoint mode, but not in slideshow mode.
But not in slideshow mode. Give me 2 secs and I'll move that to slideshow. All right, how about that?
Looks great. Take it away.
Okay. Well, welcome. Today is Chinese New Year, actually. And when I was thinking about doing a presentation on issues that women care about in the workplace, I thought about a Chinese saying. So this saying was actually credited to Mao Zedong, an old, communist Chinese leader from history. So I'm not making any political statement whatsoever, just for the Chinese people. I had the fortunate experience of being able to go visit China a couple times over the last decade. And the women there really, I found to be remarkable in the ways in which they were holding up half the sky. So as we get going, I am Dr. Jen Ripley. I graduated from VCU in 1999 with my PhD in counseling psychology. I am now the endowed chair of integration at Regent University, and I've been a professor of psychology since 1999. When I graduated, I was tenured when I was 33 years old, and I have two young adult children in my life, and my mom life. So it gives you a little sense of me. This Chinese proverb, I'm really fond of it, partly because it gives credit to the amount of work that women do. Although I really would probably say that in many situations, particularly in service roles and companies and organizations, women often hold up more than half the sky. So I don't know if that's been your experience in your organization or not. So I'm going to talk a little bit about work-life balance. I'm not going to just talk about mother role, but I am going to talk a lot about family role. So I thought I would put forward just a little bit here. These are my two kids, my young adult kids, and I don't know that we can really say too much, but if you want to put in the chat, how many of you had a mother who worked in a job or a career where you had role models or maybe aunts, sisters, grandmother, or great grandmother? I know for myself, I'll let people put stuff in the chat. My own experience, my mom was home my whole life, so I didn't have that as a role model. My grandmothers did work, but out of necessity due to divorce and or financial stress. So it was kind of like the women work, but really only if they have to, kind of a thing, as the norm in my family. And yet I felt like it was my role to take on a career. So yeah, an aunt for some of you, I see. Your mom was a working mom, yeah, and that's more and more common, I think, as the years go by. Whoops. As more and more people have either a mom or an aunt, a sister, that sort of thing, who are doing career. And you get to see different ways that people do work life balance in family life and other aspects of life. So I did want to throw some data at you because I'm a psychologist and we love data. It's kind of one of our things. So um, the labor force participation rates among women are pretty high, but recessions really do matter. So this is from the U.S. Chamber analysis. So this is federal data. But notice how around the 2008 recession, when we had the housing problems, that women's labor force participation went down there. And then it continued to kind of like go down some since then. And then there, of course, was a sharp drop during COVID when a lot of women were trying to figure out how could they possibly help their children do school from home and do work, and they were trying to find other ways to take care of themselves. Of course, this is really difficult for people who don't have that choice, people like my grandmothers who really had to work in order to have food. But you still do have a large percentage of the labor force that is women working. This is the percentage of women that are working in the labor force. Recessions do matter. And there still is a wage gap. So while lots of progress has been made in terms of trying to have equality, and women's wages are rising, there is still a good bit of wage gap. This is a complex conversation that an economist, I'm sure, could do much better than I can as a psychologist. But just reading the data a little bit, it's not just the fact that women often choose professions with lower pay. They feel more free to do that, or there's more interest in that. Of course, there are many professions that are dominated by women that have lower pay. And I have to say, in my own field of mental health care, since it's become predominantly women over the last 25, 30 years, the pay had gone down up until recently. So you sometimes get, if the feminization of a field happens, then the actual wages will go down. So we do have some evidence that it's not just the professions that women choose or that sort of thing, that there was some kind of complex interplay for women. So this is the landscape, and I'm sure you're all very aware of it, and we're all living that. I did want to say I am talking a little bit about mothering because it is the most common reason why women struggle to do their balance of work, right, between their work and the rest of their life. Children have a way of needing a lot of attention. They need a lot of time, right? And so it becomes a struggle for women who need to work long days, or the career demands that. But it's not just that. It can happen at any age or any family situation. I'm sure you know that women tend to provide most of the family caregiving, whether it's parents, a spouse who might have a disability or an illness. And then, of course, everyone, even if they have no family whatsoever, have their own personal needs for their health and mental health. Just as the previous talk was discussing, we need to prioritize our health, our mental health, and take care of ourselves. And many of those things take time. We need time to exercise and time to prepare food that's going to be healthy for us, that sort of thing. Or maybe for you, work-life balance is you're going to write the next great American novel or create a great work of art. And that's where you're trying to balance your work and this other part of your life that's not work. So we all have work-life balance issues as we operate in the world. Mothering is a particular one that's received a lot of attention in the literature. So almost 80% of women who left the workforce said it was due to family care, in comparison to 23% for men. So that is a big, stark gap. And so they're leaving it sometimes for elder care of family members, sometimes for child care, but that is a common reason. Now, I do want to add to it, I will support 100% in my heart and my words and deeds any woman who chooses to stay home with her children or care for an elderly family member because they feel like that is the best thing for them and their family. The whole point of the world we live in today, and so much work that's been done, is so people would have choices to do that. But we do want them to have choices and to not feel undue pressure that they can't do the work and do the mothering or the family caregiving, that it's impossible to do, right? That's what we've all been working on for a couple of decades now. So we want to make sure there's no guilt or shame. In fact, lots of praise for people who cut back, do the slow lane whenever they have young children or a family member who needs care, or to stop out for a while from the workforce. However, even though, so these are two different numbers, 79% of women who left said it was due to family care. Of women, 74% of women with minor children are in the workforce in some way. So you can think about the people in your workplace, how many of them have children, right? How many of them are parenting and caring for their children right now, and they're trying to figure out how to make a soccer tournament, and also get a report done on time, right? All of those things. And then the number one reason that people tend to withdraw that's listed in the workforce data is the cost of childcare. So this is a national problem, and the cost of child care has gone up in the last few years. Even it's had a significant increase, and for lots of reasons for that. For many women who are mothering or caregiving, flexibility in hours and remote work is really important, especially when they have younger children. And yet we're in trends back and forth, for working from home. And then people are pulling people back in to not work from home. Again, not commenting on federal things right now, but that's happening and it's affecting a lot of people. And so people are needing to figure out, what do I do now with my young children, when they may have had a little bit of flexibility, if they could do remote work, or could be flexible in their hours, maybe work, from 6 to 3 or something, instead of being there, in the after school hours. So those are, larger issues. And part of the problem with this is that we have a collective action problem, that, second shift as a mom is real. I remember, doing a Saturday marriage retreat. So I'm a couple counseling is my area of specialty. And once in a while I'll do a kind of a marriage enrichment talk or something. And I had done one on a Saturday. My kids were still young. And I got to the end of it, and I actually was co-leading it with a guy. And this guy was really sharp and thoughtful, kind of a guy. Made a lot of difference actually to work with somebody like that. And he kind of turned to me at about 3:30 when we were heading out, and he's like, "Ready for your second shift?" And I said, "Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen," right? Because my partner, he had been home for all day, and taking care of kids. And fortunately, this guy, he had the same issue. He was going to go home and do second shift with his kids too. They were similar ages. So this is real, which means that women who are parenting, and some might be even grandparenting, right? So not doing it younger with more energy, but helping to raise children that are grandchildren, so they're an older age. And they're working all day at our organizations and businesses, and then they're going home and they're working to care for children and all of their needs in that time. So we're just kind of bringing all of this forward into our consciousness. It's real. I did want to bring up, again, couple and families is my area. I don't know if you remember this from the pandemic. This guy was presenting on a news show, and remember during the pandemic they were all doing this like from home, right? And in the middle of his talk, his kids like wandered into the room, right? They like opened the door and came in while he was doing a national news show, and his wife was like scrambling in to try to get them. And we all, I'm sure, saw the clip and saw it afterwards if you didn't see it, during. And so it was really kind of interesting. He was a BBC reporter, by the way. But it really brought to the forefront what families were trying to do during the pandemic, but even since. And this was someone who was working from home. And also it looked like his wife there, that lovely wife, was also there at home too. And they had 2 jobs though, and they had children, and they were trying to manage and take care of their children. So we are all facing these kinds of issues, but I thought this one was a particularly good one. Yeah, I've watched it a good bit too and really appreciated it. Just kind of felt like, oh yeah, I know exactly how you feel, with all of that. So for couples that have 2 jobs, for those that are in a couple relationship and they're doing, 2 parents, 2 jobs, is there equal share in partners? The research isn't horrible, but it's not great. Okay, that's the take-home message, right? Essentially, what we found across the literature is that 56% of fathers say, yeah, I think I share equally whenever both partners have jobs, right? They surveyed people where both partners have jobs. And the fathers are saying, yeah, I share equally. And the mothers are saying, not really, only 46%. There's a 10% difference there, right? This is our male-female couples. And on top of that, the research tends to show that mothers are more likely to manage school requirements, all the things that the schools need, medical care and appointments for their children, managing morning routines, getting lunch boxes ready, and kids to the bus stop on time, and all of that. There's a funny little story I had seen, I thought you might enjoy. And this is a father who was trying to be really helpful and really engaged and say, hey, when will we run out of diapers? I can pick up some. And the mother's response is, I've already ordered those 5 times. Right? Like since the last time that you asked about diapers, right? And this is just a good example of the mental load that women often carry. So they're not just doing the dishes and vacuuming. And maybe the husband does just as much of that, but there's also a mental load of, is the kid all right? When's the next appointment? Do they need to have a dentist appointment? Do I need to reschedule that? Are we low on diapers? It's kind of a long list. I remember being in that phase of life, for me too. I'd like to propose that this is a wicked problem and a collective problem, meaning no one person, no mom or woman who's caregiving in any way, whether it's children or elders or disabled people, and no one family can solve this alone. It really is a collective problem. It is a national problem. It is a local problem. Here in Hampton Roads area, right? We have daycares around, we have childcares, but some of the good ones are really tough to get into. We know, right? And if you're not really on top of it, or you move to the area, I've seen that with my students who have children and they're trying to find childcare. It can be really difficult to find good quality, particularly good quality, low cost childcare, and they can't control that, right? But they're facing that challenge. So I'd like for us as leaders in the community to think a little bit about this for us. One is, what can I do? For us to think that my work is not just to take care of myself and figure out things alone, right? I'm not a solo person in the world. I live in a community at work. I live in a community in my neighborhood and with other people that I have friendships and relationships with, and organizations in the community. We have supervisors and coworkers, their spouses and partners. Family needs are everyone's shared concern, and an organization or a workplace that has that mentality is much healthier, right? And tends to have much better retention of their employees if, the bottom line is needed for people. As you think about not just policies in the work that you do, but also thinking about the kind of attitudes, right? The kind of assumptions that might be communicated in small words, in staff meetings, right? When getting together, to be able to respond to someone saying, hey, I'm going to need to take my mother to a doctor's appointment on Friday. She's not driving anymore. And to have people respond with, oh, of course. Okay, right? And to have an acceptance of that and an encouragement of that. Now, we all know there are people who have difficulties with managing all of that, and then they can become difficult in the workplace as a coworker or a supervisee, because they're having difficulty managing the workloads and they're not communicating well about it. But I think that we can expect good communication, and I think that we can expect that everyone in a workplace will sometimes need to go take care of their health at doctor's appointments, have their childcare providers call in sick and not be able to take them, or have to take an elder family member to an appointment or something like that. We can advocate in our workplace. I have really enjoyed, I have to say, when I first had my kids, Regent's a fairly small university, really, and fairly young university. And so I had my first child in 2001, and I was told, at least at the time, I didn't check the records, but I was told that I was the first faculty to continue working full time after having a child, right? And so they were kind of like, are you going to come back? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm really early in my career. They, said, okay, that's the first time that's happened. And there weren't like policies and things in place. Now, I had the leadership over me that were really kind, that talk to me about it in a thoughtful way, right? Knowing that I was getting kind of scared, like what's going to happen? There's not a policy, right? Like there's not a history, right? Like there's not like, oh, 10 people have done this before and this is how they did it. Right? So I did talk to some of the other faculty who had children at home, but they just weren't there at the time they had babies. But I can tell you that there was an older woman there who kind of hazed me and kind of said, hey, well, I had to figure it out and I had to quit my job in order to care. And I had to do all these things. So I don't know why can get away with it kind of thing. And I mean, I was 25 years ago and I still remember that conversation. It was hurtful and I had to do some forgiveness work, which is important work to do. But I want to share that because I had other people who were really supportive. And one of the things I've enjoyed is I've become an older woman myself and moved in. Sometimes I've been a director, been a mentor to people. Being able to say to my teaching assistant right now is having her first child to say, this week, she brought up, oh, the baby's coming in April. So I said, okay, so it sounds like you're finishing at the end of March and we won't have any responsibilities. And she's like, no, that's okay. But if you need me to get online on something and maybe handle something in April. And I said, but of course not. Things will get covered. You're on leave. But of course not, right? And so she's vulnerable as a teaching assistant, especially in a vulnerable role. And when we're the older woman, to not haze the younger ones who are having their children, but when they have their maternity leaves, to say, but of course, please take your leave, take the full leave, right? And I will support you in that and help cover for you in that. I think that's important. So even if you made different decisions, so we all make different decisions. And like I said, some people continue working, some people, don't do that. Some people do half time and slow lanes, right? And so how can we support each other in all the decisions? If a woman is quitting, we don't need to talk down to her either if she's not going to work there anymore in your workplace. If you're in an executive role, I just encourage you to consider, do you have good policies in place? Have they been reviewed in the last 5 or 10 years to see if they're up to date? Or consider creating a committee to address policies that promote work-life balance. Those tend to work better if it's not just focused on younger women who are having their children, but understanding that the research shows that that's kind of like the bulk of stress is on younger women having their children. If you are a mentor in your workplace, a listening ear to a younger woman who's facing the crunch of young children and still in that early to mid-career role where they're trying to establish themselves goes a long ways. And so thinking about who's around me and who can I, give words of encouragement to. If you're a community leader among us today, thank you for anything you do that promotes quality daycare centers and after-school programs in our area. They are crucial to the children of our community as well as to the families. And that radiates out into our workplaces. We are all dependent on these things so that, half of the sky can continue working. And if you're in a crunch and feeling like the resources are too few, really being thoughtful that this is a collective action problem and what is appropriate for your organization to provide. What's in your power to advocate for yourself if you're in this role? Generally, the research says ask for what you need in a careful but direct request to either your partner at home, right, your family members, or to your workplace. There may be issues of stress reactivity in the family, and so it's important to not engage that and to pick the right time. Basically, it's funny, our brains rely on sugar, and as the day goes on, the brain sugar goes down. That's why it's easier to get tempted by a piece of cake at night than in the morning, because our self-control tends to kind of go down as the day goes on. And so like picking the right time to have a difficult conversation with your partner, but also with your boss, to state your understanding of what you think their interests are, what you think they need out of it, and then make a clear, direct request for what you need, listening to each other without dismissing the other person's perspective. What's in your power? Oops, I think I've already done that. Oh, no, I haven't. So I've talked about clear, direct request, lower income families do rely a lot on extended kinship networks. So watching out for any lower income families in your network that don't have extended kinship networks, that can really be very difficult on them. Whereas higher income families tend to rely on hired assistance. But clarifying goals and responsibilities with those that you are coordinating with, whether that's caregiving an elderly family member, and kind of regularly sitting down and talking about what are our goals here. Things keep changing with caring for, Aunt Mabel, and like what are the responsibilities do they need to shift. A good childhood doesn't have to include parents taking their children to all their events and activities every day. And so I just kind of want to like say that out loud. It's really okay if parents aren't at every single thing at all time. But peer support as well as mentor support is also really helpful. This same kinds of things that I just said about partner, they also work with a boss. So just kind of reminding everybody, you can take those same things to a boss, but it might be better to ask your boss for, maternity leave or FMLA leave or something in the morning when your boss is kind of feeling okay, and make a clear direct request, but also communicate what you think their interests are going to be and their needs are going to be in the workplace. All right. Basically, I end my talk with just some thoughts about how work-life balance is for all of us. Everyone has to deal with work-life balance, and I'll end also with a short story. Originally, the story was about a wise father, but I'm going to make it about a wise mother because this is a women's forum. So there's a story of a wise mother whose children noticed that every day she took off something, bent down, and put something on the banyan tree at the end of their property. When she came home, she bent down at the banyan tree and picked up something before coming into the house. They asked their mother, "What are you doing each day at the banyan tree?" And she said, "When I come home from the office, I hang the garland of office pressure, politics, and everything related to the outside world in the tree. And then again, when I go to the office, I stand under the tree and put in the garland of the outside world and go to the office." I hope we can all find a banyan tree to hang up the stress of the outside world and enjoy that work-life balance for all of us. Thank you very much.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And yes, everyone, please keep those questions coming into the chat. Yes, first comment from Larissa says she had to go back to work 1 week after giving birth, and she didn't have maternity leave at the time, and it was a lot. So thank you for sharing that. And here's an interesting question from Opal. And Opal says, I started a new job in the fall, great job. I negotiated flex hours that I will need as kids' spring sports begins. How can I tell an older male boss, and she knows her older male boss is not going to like it. Any tips on how to position that workload as I leave at 3? I will get back online at 8.
Yeah. So the ideas are to think about when is a time during the day when that older male boss is more, has more sugar in his brain, right? So the sugar goes down as the day goes on, right? So, don't pick a time that's not a good time for him and when he's going to be tired. So that would be a good thing to do. And then I think also going to him and saying, "Hey, I know that me leaving at 3 to do some children, things with children could be a problem at work. And I've been thinking through this, and those are some things I was thinking that I could do to try to mitigate that, and try to address it. And maybe I can check email in the evening for sure so that things aren't sitting from 2:30 until the next day, or the communication in the workplace, that sort of thing. Every workplace is different, but let me bring that to you. Sometimes a little older guys talking about their grandkids or something and what they appreciate about them, there's a little empathy that can build there too. So I think those would be things I would be trying to do.
Well, thank you. Well, here's a fun question from Flora. She said, real problem. A younger staffer is taking advantage of our flex policies. She probably doesn't realize that old ladies see her Instagram. Any tips on how to tell her that unlimited PTO is not for eyelash extensions?
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, humans are humans, right? We're all humans. So not everybody likes their work, and feels that sense of responsibility for it. So I mean, I think if you saw someone on Insta, I think it's probably worthwhile to tell them, you know. So, and just to have a little bit of a, hey, I saw on Insta you were getting your eyelashes done. So I'm just looking out for you. The bosses might see that sometime too. And, I'd hate for you, in many places, that's something you can get fired for. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one more question before we go to our next presentation. And this one says, what is a first step in achieving balance? I'm in sales and I'm always selling, even in carpool line.
Yeah. I really like I do like these 5-minute quiet spots in my life for getting a little bit of balance. And 5 minutes actually feels like a really long time sometimes to just sit and do nothing. But it's amazing to me when I don't do that, how much it affects me. And so saying, okay, 5 minutes once or twice a day is not going to change my sales at the end of the week, right? That's not going to make a difference. And knowing that if I give myself enough space, I actually will be more effective after I take that 5 minute or even maybe a half-hour walk at lunch or something, just so that I can have a sense of things. You can also try to train other people how to treat you a little bit too, right? Like, hey, I take a half an hour for lunch and I'm not going to answer the phone from 12 to 12:30, but I will love to talk to you from 12:30 on. So it's a thought.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap and move to our next presentation from Stephanie, any final words of wisdom for our viewers today?
Oh, no, I just hope you're able to find that work-life balance. I know it's a lifetime thing for me too.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your fantastic presentation today.
Thanks.